discover Ginger's incredible 30-day journey, from washing bikes to touching 1,000 hearts. Ginger had a mission, and it was as big as the summer sky above Maplewood. At 16, she wasn't just any girl. She was a dreamer, a doer, and, above all, a believer in the goodness of people. The sun beat down as she slid her sponge across the first bike of the day. Bubbles danced in the air, catching the light like tiny rainbows. Each bike held stories, families, friendships, laughter, and Ginger was determined to keep those stories shining bright. As she scrubbed the rust off the handlebars, she pictured the laptop that would bring her ideas to life. This summer, Revival needs our help, she declared to her best friend Sarah, who had dropped by to chat. But with every bike she cleaned, whispers swirled around her. What if no one donates? What if this is just a pipe dream? They were fears she swallowed hard, but carried with her nonetheless. You've got this. Sarah, encouraged, eyes shining with hope. This moment was just a shape-shifting seed of what was to come. As the days rolled on, more bikes rolled in. Mr. Thompson, a local veteran with a heart of gold, shared tales of when Maplewood was alive with laughter and excitement. He told her about the magic of the summer revival, of parades and fireworks that lit up the sky. The town, once pulsating with joy, was now struggling much like Ginger. As she washed each bike, sweet notes of nostalgia filled the air. Ginger realized that uniting the community might just breathe life back into those dreams. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. But just as her eyes shone with purpose, doubt crept in. A plan to gather donations fell apart, like a house of cards in a windstorm. The community felt the failure, and whispers seemed to turn sour as division loomed. It was heart-wrenching to see despair draw lines across Maplewood like an invisible wall. Then came the meeting. An electric tension buzzed in the air, and Ginger's heart raced like a wild stallion. This was her chance. Standing before friends, neighbors, and strangers, her voice trembled but soared, echoing tales of struggle and resilience. We are more than what we've lost, she yelled, her words hanging heavy. As she challenged the stereotypes cast upon her family, something shifted. She was a spark, igniting a flame in others. Voices began to rise, murmurs of agreement and growing hope spreading like wildfire. Yet, uncertainty still clouded the room. Would her honesty resonate, or would judgment serve to silence her? Would her plea unravel years of hurt and division? She stood there fearless, but vulnerable at the cusp of a newfound journey. The weight of a community's heart resting on her young shoulders. Would this revival not just be an event, but a revival of hope itself? As the crowd's gaze fixed on her, the clock ticked, and the future of Maplewood lay in the balance. The room seemed to hold its breath, waiting for something monumental to break the tension. Ginger looked into the faces of her neighbors, some she had known for years, others mere acquaintances. The flicker of hope in their eyes mirrored her own, yet she sensed an undercurrent of fear and skepticism lurking just beneath the surface. Would they give her a chance? Would they believe in her vision for Maplewood? As she took a step back, her heart raced. A hush fell over the crowd, as if they were collectively bracing for impact. Ginger clenched her fists, determined to push through the uncertainty. Remember when we held the summer revival last time? We laughed together, shared stories, and came together as a family. The memories poured out of her, filled with warmth that seemed to pierce through the chilly air. We can bring that magic back. At that moment, a young boy in the front row, Tommy, raised his hand timidly. Ginger caught his eye and recognized the wobbly confidence in him. What if we just, I don't know, throw a block party? It can't hurt, right? His small voice sparked energy in the room, igniting a wave of nostalgia for simpler times. Somi chuckled, while others exchanged glances filled with curiosity. Hearing these words, Ginger seized the momentum. Exactly. A block party. It can be the first step. Maybe we can all share our stories, cook our favorite dishes, and just connect. Excitement bubbled inside her as she envisioned the possibilities. She saw the tables lined with food, laughter filling the air, and children playing on bikes, an image she had been chasing. Slowly, hands began to rise, people chiming in with ideas about games, music, and potluck dishes. As the conversation picked up, words tumbled out like marbles in a joyful race. The energy shifted from doubt to purpose. For the first time, she saw people leaning in, engaging, willing to take part in her dream. But just as hope swelled, a voice broke through the buzzing echo. Ms. Harper, the longtime librarian, stood up, her brow furrowed. Ginger, this sounds wonderful, but what about the funding? Can we realistically make it happen? Her skepticism was tangible, its weight adding pressure to Ginger's already fragile confidence. A gasp swept through the crowd. They had been so wrapped up in the moment that the financial reality loomed ahead like a storm cloud. Ginger felt the heaviness settle over her. Sure, we can find a way. If every family contributes just a little, it can be our own community-funded event. She replied, her voice resonating with determination, but the nagging doubts began to creep back in. Could she really rely on the trust of the community? How would they respond to a request for help, a plea for unity? Just then, Sarah's hand shot up. I'll organize it. We can set up online donations or create something at the bike wash. If we all reach out, Maplewood can come together. Ginger felt warmth radiate in her chest. Could this really happen? Hope danced like fireflies in her spirit. Then came the biggest hurdle. But what if we still fall short? What if we try and it fails? The thoughts clung to her, heavy like the summer heat. She decided to speak with her heart, hoping the sincerity would shine through. If nothing else, we will still have tried together. The words hung in the air, their weight a mixture of vulnerability and strength. The silence was electric, but a few nods began to emerge. It was now or never. Are we willing to risk it all for our town? She launched her challenge, and the intensity in the room heightened. One by one, people began to stand, breaking through the tension with cheers and affirmations. They were ready to collectively rebuild their hope. Yet, deep down, Ginger felt a flutter of uncertainty. What if they threw all they had into this and it didn't work out? As voices ignited around her, a spotlight felt locked on Ginger, and she knew there was no turning back. Moments later, As the energy of the crowd surged, a full tide of ideas came crashing over her. But amidst the excitement, one question loomed. Could her soul be bolstered enough to embrace the journey ahead? Komi wa? The time for decision had arrived, and a glimmer of clarity flashed before her. With every heart she touched, everything rested on one truth: would her community rally behind her when they really needed it the most? As the adrenaline buzzed in the air, Ginger found herself swept up in the moment, yet the soft hum of doubt lingered like a ghost at the back of her mind. She was finally gaining momentum, but it felt as if she was one tiny spark away from being extinguished. "Okay, everyone," she said, capturing attention once more. "Let's start brainstorming. What can we do to make this block party not just possible, but unforgettable?" The crowd leaned in, caught in the thrill of possibility. Sarah was the first to respond. "We could have a bake-off. Everyone loves cookies." The mention of sweet treats sparked a round of laughter and claps. Ginger felt her heart lifting. And old Mr. Jenkins could bring his big grill for a cookout. Piped up another neighbor, excitement etched across their face. The more ideas flowed, the more the atmosphere crackled with hope. "Let's think big." Ginger encouraged, her voice gaining strength. "What about a community mural? We can celebrate everyone's stories on one wall, turning art into togetherness." The room erupted in lively chatter as people began to sketch out plans. But then, from the back, a voice cut through the excitement. "How do we keep it running? One hungry neighbor can eat a lot more than just cookies." It was Mark, their town's self-appointed realist. His words sliced through the elation like a sudden chill. Ginger turned to him, urgency in her pulse. "We can approach local businesses for sponsorships. If they can see how this will bring people together, it's a win for everyone. Plus, we all have talents, let's showcase them. Music, crafts, performances, there are so many ways." Mark narrowed his gaze, processing. "That could work if everyone pitches in. But let's be real, you're asking for a lot from people who are, well, worn out." She met his eyes, her own resolute. "I know they're tired, Mark, paralyzed by life's demands. But they're also full of love for Maplewood. They want to connect again. We just need a push." A heavy silence seeped back into the room, but this time there were shifts in seats, heads nodding slowly in agreement. Ginger felt the swell of encouragement against the waves of dread still nipping at her heels. It was when Tommy, once again, piped up with the sweetest enthusiasm. "I can help with the games, and I'll even be the DJ." The child's face beamed with pride, melting the tension gripping the adults around him. Laughter erupted, warmed by innocence and excitement, and Ginger saw it, the walls of hesitation starting to crumble. It was as if Tommy's tiny voice had become the voice of hope for all of them. They started tossing around more creative ideas. A pie-eating contest, a bake sale alongside a flower stall, even a talent show where children could showcase their skills. Ginger felt her heart race as she imagined the whole town coming together, laughter echoing against the backdrop of decorated streets. Soon, their small enclave buzzed like a beehive, filled with conversation and laughter. Ginger's spirit soared. "All right, Maplewood, let's map out our roadmap," she announced, rallying the crowd. As they enthusiastically began outlining responsibilities, floors, and timelines, it spread like wildfire. Still, A sliver of worry lodged itself deep inside her. Would it be enough? Would they have the energy when the day came? As she jotted down the plan, the excitement reinvigorated by teamwork washed over her. But just as she thought the response couldn't be more thrilling, she caught sight of Miss Harper, her eyes narrowing like storm clouds. "Ginger," she said carefully, "what about the permits? This isn't just a small gathering. There are rules, hydrants to worry about, safety concerns." Ginger felt a chill. Even the enthusiasm in the air felt a bit heavier. "Now, that's a good point. We might need to strategize for that, too." But amid the mounting anxiety, her heart still pulsed with an eagerness she couldn't suppress. The road ahead might be rocky, but it was paved with hope. Taking a deep breath, she turned to everyone, her voice steady and filled with purpose. "The only way to do this is together, and we can figure out the logistics, step by step. It's about communication and trust, and I believe we have both in spades." The room erupted again, determination settling in. Yet, as the evening wore on and the conversation flowed into the night, a question loomed in her mind like a heavy weight. What if the whole thing fell apart the moment they attempted to raise their vision into reality? As they huddled together, a new challenge awaited, and it felt as if they were on the edge of something monumental. Would they come together when it mattered the most, or would the worries drown out their hard-fought progress? The meeting shimmered with ideas, each one a tiny flame of hope igniting a flicker of unity in the hearts gathered around Ginger. Yet, as she glanced around the room, the noise dulled momentarily in her ears. She could see the flickers of doubt harshly shadowing the enthusiasm. "Okay, folks," Ginger began, trying to recapture the momentum. "We need to tackle these questions we're all worrying about head-on." Her voice was a melody of determination, coaxing the crowd back into the lively buzz. "Let's split into small groups," Ginger suggested. "One for logistics, one for outreach, and one for planning the fun stuff." The murmurs of agreement reassured her. "Who's with me for outreach?" Ginger asked, hoping to rally even more enthusiasm. A few hands shot up, and she felt a rush of gratitude. "Thank you. We'll need to draft some sponsorship letters tomorrow." As the crowd divided into their groups, she felt a warmth spreading in her chest. Maybe they could actually make this work. But as she walked over to the logistics table, uncertainty coiled in the pit of her stomach. There was Mr. Jenkins, papering and scribbling away, but even he had a furrow in his brow that spoke volumes. She moved closer, peeking at his notes. "Mr. Jenkins, do you think we can pull off a cookout? We haven't even discussed safety measures." He sighed, rubbing his temples. "I just hope we're together enough to make it happen. You'd be surprised how many times things go wrong. And I've seen the permits become an even larger issue." Ginger took a deep breath, her confidence suddenly feeling paper-thin. "You're right. We need to reach out to the city office. Maybe we can arrange a meeting next week." Mr. Jenkins nodded slowly, suspicion still resting on his brow. "Let's just be sure every detail is covered. No loose ends." She was about to reassure him, but then a shout from across the room pulled her attention. "Hey, everyone. What if we add in a Maplewood talent show alongside the other events?" Tommy's voice rang through the air, and several heads turned in interest. Laughter bubbled as one resident chuckled. Tommy could host it. He'd be on fire. Ginger felt a flicker of warmth return. It was this energy that melted her doubts. They could leave a mark on each other's hearts in ways they never imagined. As the night deepened, brainstorming continued under the soft glow of fuzzy lights, and each person dove into discussions with fervor. Sipping her lukewarm coffee, Ginger felt her senses come alive. But suddenly, amidst the laughter, there was a tense murmur. The crowd turned, eyes drawn to a shadow lingering at the door. It was Sheriff Collins, arms crossed, watching silently. The laughter faded, uncertainty rippling through the group. Ginger hesitated, her heart racing as all eyes landed on her. Would he throw a wrench in their plans? Would Maplewood's hopes crumble right in front of their eyes? "Sheriff!" Ginger called out, forcing a bright smile, her voice less shaky than her heartfelt. "Come join us. We're planning an amazing block party." He stepped forward slowly, his expression unreadable. "I hear there are big plans in the works, but we need to talk." Ginger's chest tightened. It felt as though the beauty of their plans hung by a thread, and she couldn't shake the weight of his gaze. What did he want to say? The glimmer of hope faded into a cautious tension. Would the sheriff curb their excitement, or would he become an ally? Tomorrow was a new day, but tonight, uncertainty loomed like nightfall, and she was desperate to know what lay ahead. Ginger held her breath, her heart a wild drum echoing in her chest. Sheriff Collins stood in the doorway, his shoulders broad, casting an imposing figure that drew the eye of everyone in the room. The laughter from moments before faded into a mere whisper, the atmosphere shifting from buzzing excitement to heavy anticipation. The sheriff took a step closer, his boots scraping against the wooden floor. Ginger's pulse quickened. His expression was serious, and she could see the muscles in his jaw tense. "I appreciate what you're trying to do here, Ginger," he began slowly, choosing his words. "But a block party? You're taking on quite a bit." She swallowed. "We believe it will bring the community together, Sheriff. It's about connection and support." She lifted her chin, trying to match his serious demeanor with her own conviction. "Connection is important, but safety comes first." His voice softened, just a touch, though the weight of his words remained. "Last summer, we had an incident that rattled a few folks. The noise alone can attract trouble." He looked around at the gathered faces, gauging their reactions. Some shoulders slumped visibly at his comments, while others remained defiantly hopeful. Panic clawed at her insides. "We can put safety measures in place, I promise. I'll work with Mr. Jenkins to ensure everything is covered." Ginger felt a wave of determination washing over her, igniting the flickering confidence that had just begun to bloom. The sheriff raised an eyebrow, curiosity mixed with skepticism. "And how will you keep the peace? You know the permit process isn't quick. And the last thing we need is chaos." That moment she realized the sheriff wasn't just a figure of authority. He was a lovable protector of Maplewood, a guardian who carried the weight of the community on his shoulders. "If you'll work with me," Ginger proposed, "I can draft a detailed plan for safety protocols and engage the residents in a discussion about it. You could be a part of that." A flicker of surprise crossed his face. "You want my input?" "Absolutely. You're part of this community as much as anyone. It's about unity." Sheriff Collins shifted his stance, the edges of his lips twitching upward slightly. "Unity. Now, That's something I can get behind. The shift in tension filled Ginger with hope. Maybe, just maybe, if they did this together, they could forge a stronger bond. Let's meet tomorrow, he said finally. I want to see that detailed plan. He gestured to the group, whose expressions transformed from confusion to encouragement, a collective sigh of relief rippling through the crowd. Behind him, a few residents exchanged glances, their throaty whispers echoing excitement. Maybe he's on board, one murmured. Looks like we just gained an ally. As Sheriff Collins stepped back, the atmosphere changed again, laughter bubbling anew. Ginger felt a spark of joy. Let's dive into this together. We'll make it happen. But the feeling was bittersweet. While things had taken a turn for the better, the realization hit her that their journey wouldn't be without hurdles. The plans now stretched beyond just a cookout. They required thorough thought and consideration. The night rolled on, the debates on safety measures breaking into spirited discussions about events and talents. Despite her inner turmoil, Ginger couldn't help but smile at the beautiful vision being painted in words, colors, and laughter. As they wrapped up, one lingering question gnawed at her. Could they truly bridge the doubts and fears? Or would the challenges ahead unravel their fragile unity? With a weary heart that still pulsed with hope, she whispered to herself, let's see what tomorrow brings. Ginger woke early the next morning, the golden rays of sun spilling through her window. It was a new day filled with possibilities, yet the weight of anticipation gnawed at her. She had promised Sheriff Collins a detailed plan, and she knew how crucial this meeting would be. There was no room for mistakes. As she paced her kitchen, the scent of coffee mingled with the thoughts swirling in her mind. With a deep breath, she set to work. She sprawled papers across her kitchen table, scribbling down ideas. Safety protocols, community engagement strategies, even potential activities flashed through her mind like a slideshow. Every note she wrote felt like a heartbeat in her commitment to bringing people together. But worries began to creep in. What if residents didn't feel safe? What if rumors of last summer's incident overshadowed their efforts? She shook her head, forcing herself to focus, reminding herself of the palpable excitement from last night's meeting. She couldn't let fear dictate their plans. As midday drew near, she gathered her notes, still feeling that flicker of hope in her chest. She arrived at the sheriff's office, her heart thumping in tandem with the pulsating rhythm of her resolve. Sheriff Collins was already there, his usual stern expression softening momentarily as he gestured for her to sit. Ginger placed her papers on his desk, the sound echoing in the quiet room. Thank you for meeting with me, Sheriff, she began, her voice steadier than her nerves suggested. Of course, he replied, shifting forward, eyes scanning her notes. I was curious to see what you came up with. As she began to outline her plan, she could feel his gaze weighing every word. She presented her safety protocols, from neighbor watch groups to designated quiet hours. She even suggested a family day with games and music, promising to engage local talent to showcase what Maplewood had to offer. Sheriff Collins nodded, but his brow furrowed. These are solid ideas, but it's important these residents feel part of this plan. They need to see themselves in it. Ginger. Ginger's heart raced. You're right. I think involving them in the planning phase could ease their fears. Maybe we could host an open meeting to share ideas. The sheriff sat back, a thoughtful look on his face. Community input is vital. You'd need to make sure everyone is informed, perhaps even hear their stories. Sometimes it takes a personal touch to make change. He was right. The more personalized their approach, the stronger their connection would become. With excitement bubbling inside her, she said, "If we can get people to share their stories, we create a family vibe. A neighborhood where everyone believes they matter." The sheriff smiled. That's the spirit. The sense of camaraderie between them grew, a partnership forming amidst hopes and plans. They exchanged ideas, and the conversation flowed into the afternoon. Ginger felt lighter, their visions merging into something beautiful. As she left the office, the sun already beginning to dip low in the sky. Ginger couldn't shake the feeling that they had turned a corner. But as shadows lengthened, a nagging thought began to nibble at her. While unity was building, was there still a fear lurking beneath the surface, one that could threaten the whole endeavor? That question lingered in her mind as she returned home. What obstacles lay ahead? And would their growing unity be enough to overcome them? Ginger tossed and turned that night, sleep eluding her. Each tick of the clock echoed in her mind, amplifying her worries. What would happen when they opened the floor to the community? Would they all come together, or would old grievances resurface, shadowing their dreams? The next morning, she forced herself into action. Emerging from bed, she made herself a strong cup of coffee, the familiar scent grounding her. The plan to host an open meeting needed a kickstart. She grabbed her phone, texting Sheriff Collins to let him know she wanted to discuss promotion strategies. His reply came quickly, filled with enthusiasm. They were a team now, and it felt good. By noon, she was at the local coffee shop, armed with flyers and her unwavering determination. The small bell above the door jingled as she entered, and the aroma of roasted coffee beans welcomed her. She spotted Mrs. Hodgkins sitting in her usual spot, reading the newspaper. With her warm smile, Mrs. Hodgkins had always been a pillar of the community. Ginger approached, her heart pounding. "Hey, Mrs. H, mind if I join you?" she asked, her voice light. "Of course, dear." The older woman beamed, folding her newspaper. "What's all this about?" Ginger set down her flyers with a flourish. "I have a proposal for an open meeting. We're gathering ideas to improve community safety and engagement. I'd love your help spreading the word. It's vital everyone feels safe and heard." Mrs. Hodgkins studied the flyer, her brow knitting slightly. "You're brave, Ginger. Change can be scary, especially after last summer." "I know," Ginger replied softly. "But if we work together, this is our chance to reshape things." "I really believe we can make a difference." Mrs. Hodgkins nodded, her expression softening. "You've got the right spirit, dear. I'll help however I can." Their conversation flowed smoothly, gathering momentum as other locals stopped by, drawn in by Ginger's energy. She handed out flyers, explained the meeting, and listened to their concerns. Each small chat felt like a piece of the puzzle, and slowly the flickering hope inside her began to blaze. But as the day wore on, she ran into some resistance. A few grumpy residents grumbled about the past, and for a moment, despair threatened to creep in. "What do you think you can fix?" one man muttered, scowling. "Change takes time," Ginger asserted, searching for courage in her voice. But we need to trust each other, support each other. That's how we'll truly feel safe. A flicker of understanding crossed his face, but he remained skeptical. Could she really bridge that gap? Later, she decided to visit the community center, where the last summer's incident had left its mark. It was eerily quiet, and memories washed over her like waves. She imagined the laughter that once filled the room, now replaced by whispers and unease. Heart pounding, she pictured how many lives were connected here, a nexus of families, friendships, and shared experiences. Ginger took a deep breath. This place held both scars and stories. Her plan had to honor both, and she knew she had to dive deeper to connect with that raw, vibrant reality. With renewed determination, she headed home, her mind racing with ideas. If she could move past the shadows of the past, what stories might unfurl? As she glanced up at the creeping dusk, a thought struck her. What if these stories held the key to healing? She would need to reach out to everyone, challenge their fears, and stir their hopes. But would people be willing to open up? Would they trust her enough to share their truths? The answers lay just beyond the horizon, waiting to be discovered. The next day dawned bright and clear, but the promise of sunshine did little to ease Ginger's apprehensions. She was up early, going over the notes she'd jotted down the night before. Ideas bounced around in her head like restless butterflies, each one demanding attention. Today, she planned to meet with Sheriff Collins to brainstorm ways to engage the community effectively. She wanted to arm herself with as many strategies as possible before the big meeting. As the sun rose, Ginger prepared a small snack to take with her. Picking up an apple, she smiled, thinking about how, even in little ways, one could nourish both body and spirit. It was symbolic of what she was trying to achieve, a community that was healthy and open. Walking to the sheriff's office felt familiar, yet different, almost electric with unspoken potential. The air was crisp, and each step she took echoed with determination. Arriving at the office, she found Sheriff Collins seated behind his desk, a stack of papers bearing witness to his earlier hours. "Hey, Ginger. Glad you could make it," he greeted her warmly, pushing aside the papers. "What's on your mind?" Ginger laid out her thoughts enthusiastically. "I think we need to take a proactive approach, Sheriff. Let's not just announce the meeting, but create an event, something fun, engaging. Maybe a block party. Food, music, and a chance for everyone to share their concerns in a less formal setting." Sheriff Collins rubbed his chin, nodding thoughtfully. "I like that. It brings people together. But remember, you'll need a plan to handle the tough conversations too." "Right," Ginger replied, biting her lip. "It's about balance, isn't it? Enjoyment alongside serious discussion. But what if we also have storytelling stations? That way, people who are hesitant can share their thoughts anonymously." "Clever," he exclaimed. "People might feel safer sharing through writing. It gives them a voice without the immediate pressure of a crowd." Ginger felt a surge of excitement. This was their chance to craft a dialogue without fear. They spent hours planning, diving into the details, until the sun shifted high in the sky. When they wrapped up the meeting, Ginger felt an exhilaration she hadn't expected. This was the first step toward healing for her and for the town. As she left the sheriff's office, her heart raced. The afternoon was alive with promise. But there was still one major hurdle: getting approval and support from the town council. Maybe they would see the vision, maybe they wouldn't. Fingers crossed, she turned down the main street, her mind swirling with the possibilities. But as she passed by Joe's Hardware, she overheard a heated conversation between some old-timers. Their voices rose, filled with bitterness as they debated the past. Ginger hesitated, hesitant and uncertain. Should she interrupt? These were the very voices she wanted to engage, yet the tension was palpable. She quickened her pace, her heart heavy. It was one thing to have a great plan in mind, but another to confront that lingering turmoil. That night, as she sat at her kitchen table, she weighed her thoughts. The meeting was still days away, and yet every moment felt like a countdown. She was excited and terrified, wondering if people would truly listen. Would they rally behind her, or would the old grudges drown out her hopeful vision? As she pondered, she caught sight of her old scrapbook tucked in a corner of the shelf, a collection of memories that reminded her of the community's heart. What if she's Mori Memories? She grabbed her pen, jotting down a new plan. But as her thoughts flowed, she realized it would demand vulnerability from everyone involved, including herself. Would sharing her own story bring them together or create more distance? The questions loomed as the night deepened, shimmering under the glow of her lamp. What secrets would emerge, and would they pave the way for understanding or exacerbate the divide? Her heart raced with both fear and anticipation. This would be the true test of her resolve. Would those stories be enough to break down the walls that stood between them? The next morning dawned heavy with clouds, casting a shadow over Ginger's hopeful plans. As she prepared her breakfast, she gazed out the window, watching the wind dance through the trees. It was as if nature mirrored her own inner turmoil. Would reaching out to her community really work? Would the stories bind them closer, or would they deepen the rifts that already existed? After breakfast, she grabbed her keys and stepped outside, her heart racing with anxious energy. Today was the day she'd present her idea to the town council. The block party concept was bold, but every nerve in her body screamed uncertainty. Would they laugh at her, reject her entirely? As she drove through familiar streets, memories of laughter and camaraderie flashed in her mind like old film reels. Children playing in the yard, neighbors exchanging greetings. The town had once felt united. Ginger took a deep breath. The conversations she overheard yesterday still echoed in her head, but she refused to let that cloud her vision. Pulling into the town hall parking lot, the old building loomed before her like a fortress. It felt imposing, but Ginger reminded herself that the council members were not only officials, but constituents of the community too. They were her neighbors, her friends. She entered the room to find a mixture of familiar and new faces, all eyes on her as she stepped forward with her proposal. Sheriff Collins gave her an encouraging nod from the back, and she felt her resolve strengthen. "Hello, everyone," she began, her voice steady yet soft. "Thank you for gathering today. I want to talk about community engagement and how we can mend the disconnect that's been growing between us." She presented her ideas: a block party combined with storytelling stations, where people could share their experiences and concerns anonymously. As she spoke, her passion poured out, hoping to reach the hearts of the assembly. If we can create an atmosphere where people feel safe sharing their stories, we can find common ground, she explained. That's where healing starts. There was a pause as murmurs traveled around the room. Some faces glimmered with interest, while others stared blankly, skeptical and distant. A few members began shaking their heads, and her heart sank. "Ginger," one of the council members interjected, "this sounds well-intentioned, but you know our town's history. You can't just wave a magic wand and make everything better." Ginger felt the weight of the council's skepticism pressing downward, threatening to crush her spirit. "I understand that history is complicated," she replied, her voice quivering slightly. "But it also holds the potential for change. We can't keep letting it define us. We have to try." As she spoke, a flicker of recognition appeared on the faces of some attendees. Perhaps they were remembering day-to-day moments of kindness, the connection they each shared despite their grievances. The room felt like it was shifting, if only slightly. After she finished, there was a moment of silence that stretched and flickered like a candle in a gust of wind. Just as she feared they would dismiss her entirely, the sheriff stood up. "I think we should give Ginger a chance," he said firmly. "Let's not let our past keep us from possibly a brighter future." Encouraged by his words, some council members began to murmur their agreement. It was just a glimmer, but it felt like hope breaking through stone. As she left the meeting later, her heart was buoyant, but still fragile. They had ultimately agreed to consider her idea, but there were many hurdles ahead. On her way home, the sun finally broke through the clouds, bathing her in warm light. She felt a surge of optimism. But as she caught sight of the hardware store again, she remembered the old-timers' voices steeped in resentment and grief. Could she truly engage everyone? The stories they held tightly were woven with pain. Would they share them? What if the block party opened up deeper wounds instead of healing them? Ginger arrived home only to be met with the weight of unanswered questions. She was left grappling with the realness of their history and her hopes for the future. What if the stories they shared unlocked something powerful? Or would it all end in a tangled mess of grief? As the evening drew near, she couldn't shake off the feeling that the coming days would demand more than she could give. What price would she pay to heal those old wounds? The night crept in slowly, shadows gathering like whispers around Ginger as she soaked in all that had just transpired. She sat on her porch, staring up at the twinkling stars. Each one felt like a reminder of the countless stories in Maplewood stories she still needed to unearth. How could she create a space for healing when her own heart felt heavy with doubt? The next day, determination fired up inside her, a warmth mingling with the crisp morning air. She reached out to Sarah, her anchor in the storm. They spent hours crafting flyers, prepping for the open meeting, pouring words of hope into every corner. "Every story matters, Ginger," Sarah said, her voice brightening the dimness that sometimes overshadowed Ginger's thoughts. "Maybe it's the shared laughter and pain that will bring everyone together." With Sarah's encouragement, they took to the streets of Maplewood, sticking flyers on lampposts, handing them out at the cafe, and even stopping by house after house. Each conversation reignited her hope. Neighbors began sharing snippets of their own stories, broken by loss but yearning for connection. With each smile or nod of agreement, a tapestry of understanding began to weave itself, stitching the community back into place. Ginger's excitement surged. Finally, at the open meeting, she'd share their dreams. But the days flew by, and as the event approached, trepidation gnawed at her. Would the community turn up? Would they feel safe sharing? The evening of the meeting dawned, a mix of nervous energy and excitement crackling in the air. Ginger set up chairs in the community center, adorned with banners and twinkling lights, creating an embrace for those who would enter. As she looked around, each decoration felt like a message, a promise of warmth and belonging. Soon, the familiar faces began to trickle in, some wary, others hopeful, fists clenched or arms wide open. And then she recognized their Mrs. Hodgkins, old Mr. Jenkins, and even shy Tommy. They were here, and her heart swelled. Welcome, everyone. Ginger called out, her voice vibrant and alive, echoing through the space. A hush spread as heads turned toward her, anticipation painting every face. Tonight isn't just about the block party. It's about us. It's about healing together. As she spoke, a sense of connection blossomed. Stories began to flow about lost bikes, childhood games, anger from the past, and dreams for the future. Slowly, the crowd transformed from a collection of faces into a community, their fears melting under the warmth of shared experiences. Tommy nervously stepped forward to share a funny moment about his grandfather's bike. It sparked laughter, and suddenly others followed suit, weaving tales that knit them closer together. The weight in Ginger's chest lightened as the hearts in the room began to resonate. Amidst the laughter, Miss Harper raised her hand. "You know, I lost my husband last year. He loved the summer revival." We all missed that laughter. Her voice trembled but resonated strength. "But I think we can bring it back." With her encouragement, the whispers transformed into affirmations. One by one, others spoke of their dreams, hopes, and regrets. A gathering of wounds began to mend. Ginger felt tears brim in her eyes. They were not just tales of loss, but those of reclamation. Then Sheriff Collins stood. "It's important to hear these voices, and I'm proud of this community's resilience. It's about moving forward with hope." The applause that followed was thunderous. And, with each clap, solidarity cemented among them. As the night wore on, the air shifted, filled with possibilities. Ginger realized they weren't just planning a block party. They were planning a revival of hope itself. Their stories had the power to transcend stories of division, to intertwine them into a lush tapestry of understanding. Days later, as the excitement built for the block party, something remarkable happened. Local businesses began reaching out, wanting to contribute. Maybe because they felt the energy shifting, or perhaps they saw the unbreakable spirit of Maplewood reflected in the renewed faith of their neighbors. The community came alive with crafts, food, and games. Laughter echoed down the streets, children whizzed by on cleaned bikes, and the atmosphere pulsed with vibrant energy, like a heartbeat full of love and connection. When the day arrived, the sun bathed Maplewood in golden light. Dressed in her favorite summer dress, Ginger felt an electrical thrill buzzing within her. The festival unfolded like magic, and she could hardly believe it was all happening. Amid the festivity, Ginger paused at the storytelling station, a pulse of gratitude swelling in her heart. Each story shared was a step toward healing, a vein of strength running through the community. It was more than a mere event. It was the announcement of a new beginning. Finally, the time came for the talent show. The stage transformed into a spotlight for individual brilliance to shine. Tommy DJD, spinning tracks that drew in the crowd, laughter ringing like bells in the air. As the final performance concluded, the fireworks erupted above, illuminating the night sky with delightful colors, mirroring the vibrancy of their spirits. Joy spread through the crowd like wildfire, claps resonating in perfect harmony. In that moment, looking around at shared smiles, Ginger's heart swelled with a pride she never expected to feel. Maplewood had shown up for one another. They had unwrapped stories, embraced laughter, and healed wounds greater than anyone could have imagined. That night, as Ginger lay in bed, a radiant smile crossed her face. She knew that even as they had touched 100 hearts, it was only the beginning. In Maplewood, connection had triumphed over division, and hope was finally a tangible thread that bound them all. As the echoes of joy lingered in her heart, she felt a deeper understanding of community nestled within her. Ginger had not only revived the summer revival. She had ignited a flame that would burn bright, illuminating the path forward for Maplewood, one story at a time. And as she drifted off to sleep, the stars above sang quietly, weaving tales of dreams both caught and set free. Now, it's your turn to be part of the transformation. Don't wait another second. Subscribe immediately to our channel to catch the next exclusive stories that inspire and uplift. Hit that like button now to feed the algorithm, ensuring even more impactful content reaches those who need it most. Drop a comment to share your thoughts and feelings about this incredible journey and its heartwarming conclusion. And for the love of community, share this video instantly with at least 5 friends who need to join the revival of hope. You need to be part of our story. Let's make a difference together.